조선중앙 방송입니다.
Hello, I'm Gareth Justin and welcome to the Pioneer Podcast. As always, I'm joined by Justin Martell. Today we've also got Rowan Beard, DPRK Managing Director for Young Pioneer Tours, joining us. And today we will be talking to Felix Abt, author of A Capitalist in North Korea. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with the podcast, the first half is free, which you can listen to, but to hear all the juicy bits, you will need to subscribe at www.ypt.life/subscribe. So firstly, Felix, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. So we usually start off these podcasts by asking how we know each other, but you're one of the few people we've had on that I've not met in person, but how do we know each other via online, as it were?
Well, I have been one of the few Westerners who invested in the business in North Korea. And you are one of the few tour operators who take foreigners to this largely unknown, misunderstood and underreported country. So since it is a rather smallish foreign group of, well, some would call them crazies, dealing with this country, we have to sort of know one another.
That's exactly right. It really is a very, very, very small community that we live in. So Felix, where are you from, and where are you living right now?
I'm a Swiss. And I'm living right now in Vietnam, in Nha Trang, which is also called Vietnam's beach capital.
Yeah,
okay. Right. Yeah,
Rowan. My father's also living in Nha Trang at the moment as well.
Okay.
Yeah, Rowan previously lived in Vietnam, and actually we're in Cambodia at the moment. But we are neighbours that cannot see each other, unfortunately.
Yeah, hello from across the border.
But I hope that will change soon. So when you come over, or I will come over to you.
Yeah, that would be brilliant. We would certainly love to have a beer with you and shoot the breeze about all things North Korea. Now, as I said, the first part of the podcast is our kind of introduction and freebie part. So we're going to talk about North Korea much more in the second part. But as this is the part that lots of people will listen to, would you like to do a shameless plug for your book, for your very, very good book that you wrote about North Korea?
Not necessarily. I mean, to be honest, the book doesn't sell well anyway. So because it hasn't been pitched by the media and. When you're a journalist and write a book about North Korea, then you can be sure you get a lot of other journalists writing about your book. But when you're a businessman like me and a guy who does not exclusively trash this country, then it seems you're of no interest. And so my book is largely unknown.
Okay, well, most of our listeners do. Are the kind of people that would buy your book. So please tell us the title of your book and what it's about.
Yeah, my book is called A Capitalist in North Korea, My 7 Years in the Hermit Kingdom. And it deals with my experience there as a businessman. So I worked there for 7 years, and I set up and run different businesses. I also set up North Korea's first business school, and I co-founded the first European Business Association or Chamber of Commerce, if you like, and was its first president. And also,
wow.
So I'm trying to write about all these things I have done and have seen, and try to be as objective as possible, and and write facts, and not try to be how shall I say, try to be biased, and so that people got a true impression of what it was like to live and work as a foreigner in this country. And so many readers and media, they expected me to write another trash North Korea book, which I didn't, and then it seems they were disappointed. At the beginning, I couldn't find a publisher. I wrote to countless publishers, and then I published it as a self-publisher on Amazon. And then when a publisher saw that the book sells, then I was approached by a publisher who was then prepared to publish it. But as I said before, the interest, I mean, lots of influential newspapers, such as the New York Times or the Guardian, they simply ignored my book. They never wrote about it. They wrote about plenty of other books, even by people who just visit the country for a week as a tourist. As long as they had something exclusively negative to write about, they got a book review. But it was quite different in my case.
Unfortunately, what you wrote didn't fit the narrative. Sorry, Justin.
Well, we all know that the New York Times has been on the sideline and cheerleader for every major war that the United States has been in from the last century up till now. So obviously, they're not going to promote anything that doesn't, feed the narrative that might make the American public sympathetic to a war with North Korea should one ever break out.
Yes, of course. These media, mass media, they are biased, as you say. They have been embedded in every propaganda and military war that the U.S. led against smaller nations that didn't cooperate. So that's true. So you can't expect a fair reporting from such media.
Well, I can say we will definitely post a link to your book through our website and link to this podcast, and hopefully we can get you a few more sales anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, and Felix, you weren't exaggerating there. You're absolutely right. There's people who actually visited the country for less than a week, wrote a book about their experience, and it seems to sell pretty well for them.
It's bizarre, and but it's like that's what it is like.
Justin.
To be honest, I wrote the book not to make it. I didn't write a book to make money with it. It was I got so upset with all this one-sided and unfair reporting on this country. So that I thought I should write something about my experience to challenge the ordinary narrative, and that's the reason. The reason is not to make money, as I said, but it's really to give another perspective, which normally people don't get.
Well, that's certainly something we support. Justin, I know we've mentioned this in another podcast, but I think this would be a good time for you to share your dandong analogy.
Yes. I obviously, as an American and having worked in North Korea and talk to Americans about it. It's funny. I've actually found that Americans, in some instances, have been more hostile to me, for having sort of a nuanced view of North Korea than North Koreans ever were to me when visiting the country. And I was working on a job a couple of years back, and it was after I had spent time actually living and working in Dandong with Rowan, right on the Sino-Korean border. And we were talking, and I'm at a table, and I was working on a reality TV show at the time, and the sound operator on that particular shoot, he also fancied himself a world traveler, somebody who he'd done sound for documentaries in Afghanistan and other parts of the Middle East and stuff, and he was talking about how he had worked on a documentary that had shot in Dalian in China, which of course is in northeast China, and it's not far from Dandong. And he said, "Oh yeah, and I took a day trip down to Dandong, the main border city with North Korea, and you can take a boat on the Yellow River, and you drive down and you see all these fake buildings that the North Koreans have built on their side of the river, and blah blah blah." And I hadn't said anything up to this point, and I just said, "Hey man, that's not true. Like I actually lived there in that city, and those buildings are real. You can see people living in them, using in them. And also, why would the North Koreans build fake buildings? To impress the Chinese, who have bigger real buildings on the other side? Like, that doesn't actually make any sense." And everybody turned down the table and sort of looked and stared at me for a few seconds. And he looked at me for a few seconds. And then he just goes, "Yeah, so anyways, they had these fake buildings on the side," and everybody at the table just turned back to him and what he was saying. So they would have rather talked to this guy who has a fake story, who visited for one afternoon, than somebody who actually lived in the city right on the border and spent a lot of time there.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good example.
Yeah, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so I mean, I was of course bombarded from all sides for doing business, and I've been accused of propping up a brutal regime, and of being corrupt, and being corrupted by the DPRK and so on. What I did is what I did everywhere else. I have lived in 9 countries on 3 continents, and I did in many more countries business. I've traveled a lot, and I did business like I always did. You try to seize an opportunity, and then you do it in a legal way, in a decent way. I never set up sweatshops, or I never did did bad things to employees or business partners, or I even respected sanctions. So, and I think what we did, for example, I helped improve North Korea's power distribution, so that poorer regions and villages also got power. That's very important to bring poor people out of poverty. Without electricity, you cannot prosper.
And I wanted to get into that. I actually had some specific questions about that work, because I think that was the first work that you did when you came to the country in 2002. But that sort of should, I guess, get people primed for the second half, where we really get into the North Korea stuff. But I wanted to ask you, in the first half of this interview, if you could tell us a little bit more about your background and the work that you did in Africa and the Middle East prior to going to North Korea, that sort of prepared you for the North Korean experience. Or did it prepare you, or did it not prepare you for the North Korean experience?
Well, it did. Of course, every experience I had in other developing countries helped me uh, to do a better job in North Korea, because there were so many similarities. So I worked a lot in developing countries, and they all had similar problems. They lacked, for example, hard currency. They did not have good infrastructure for whatever reasons, and so yeah, it helped. And I was I you know I used to I used to work uh, for the Swedish ABB group, which is a global leader in power and automation technologies. And but in Africa and elsewhere, I was working for a pharmaceutical group and for other companies. And but ABB asked me when later in 2002 if I would be ready to go for them on their behalf to Pyongyang to help improve the infrastructure. And I said, yes, I would be happy to do so. And so then so then I worked for a short while, for a couple of years for ABB, until the ABB group felt under pressure to not to be active, or not to be too active in North Korea, because the ABB group, like all big multinational groups, they have 1/3 of their sales in North America, and 1/3 in Europe, and 1/3 in Asia. At least at that time, it was like that. So, and North Korea, that was not even 1% of the total business. So you could easily be frightened as a multinational corporation by the U.S. government, for example, and then be afraid and pull out, and that's what basically happened. And so ABB closed its representation. I was the head of this representative office, and for a while I could work as an agent, and then I had to survive. I took on other agencies and started working for other people, including a billionaire who was interested in setting up a pharmaceutical manufacturing joint venture in the DPRK. So it was.
And let's come back to those, because we want to get more in depth into sort of, again, when you came to North Korea and you started working in the power sector and then moved on to pharmaceuticals. But what were some of the other countries and experiences that you had prior to going to North Korea? In the Middle East and in Africa, what were some of the countries that you lived in, situations that projects that you worked on?
Yeah, so I was for a while in Egypt, running a pharmaceutical business. I was country director on behalf of a multinational corporation. We had a local manufacturing and distribution sales there. So I was in charge of that. And then from there, the group asked me to move on to Black Africa, to become a regional director and manage the business in there. And then and then from there, I moved to Vietnam, did some business here, represented German and Swiss and other companies here, for which whom I helped to set up manufacturing and sales operations. And then ABB approached me in 2000, and we also, my Vietnamese wife, and I also had our own business in this country. And then in 2002, I was approached by the ABB group, who said, we are interested in developing the business in the DPRK. Are you interested and working for us. Okay, because they knew me already because I had worked twice before for this group. So the ABB group was always was always an early bird. They was one of the first Western company that went to China when China opened up. They were the first company that went to Eastern European countries when it was possible to do business there, and so on. So it was kind of logical that the ABB group would be one of the first to go there, and so they asked me, and I felt pleased to go there.
And that kind of makes sense in terms of the time period, because I mean 2002 or the early 2000s would have been the era of the sunshine policy, right, where you'd had the engagement between South Korea and North Korea, right, and so was that kind of the background to it, and that's why the ABB group felt confident, right?
Yes, exactly. At that time there was no the sanctions, all those obstacles that were built up came basically from 2005, after North Korea had its first nuclear test. And but before, in 2002, it looked promising. Yeah, as you said, there was the sunshine policy. The south and north were on quite good terms at that time, and there were rumors that North Korea was about to reform the country, similar to the reforms in China and Vietnam. So that I felt was intriguing, and I thought that was great. I would like to be. I mean, I have been as a young man. I was one of the first to. I was in one of the first business delegations to go to China when China opened up. And I was in the 90s in Vietnam. So I saw these countries change. I saw how they applied reforms, but I haven't seen it from the very beginning. And I thought, now I can see it, how it works from the very beginning when the DPRK starts reforming. And I would like to be part of that process and help with my experience, what I saw in China and Vietnam before, in other developing countries. I could possibly contribute to a positive development. That was my my understanding at the time.
So you're obviously extremely well travelled. We always like to ask this to our guests. Do you know roughly how many countries you've been to?
No, I never counted them. I was really, I was always even as a teenager, I was already fascinated by foreign countries and cultures, and I started traveling very early. First as a backpacker, and later as a business traveler to countries really near and far from Switzerland, and. I never counted the countries. There were so many. I also did travel to the former Soviet Union, to the former Comic-Con for business. I was in South America, in Asia. I was in many Asian countries. But I never counted the countries, and yeah.
Oh, so just correct me if I'm wrong. So you were in the Soviet Union when it was the Soviet Union?
Yeah. I was already there. I did business there.
So when was that? What kind of year?
Well, that was when Gorbachev was Secretary General. That was the last Secretary General, yeah.
Well, please tell us about that. Yeah,
that was when was that? End of 80s. Was that end of 80s, mid 80s, or I don't remember exactly. And yeah, the Soviet Union was interested in doing more business and getting technology from the West, and at that time we had to negotiate about counter trade, barter trade and things like that. I remember we had a business in Yugoslavia at that time. It does not exist anymore, but we sold a small power station to the then Yugoslavia, and were paid in bicycles and loads of containers of bicycles. We found a huge retailer who would buy these bicycles at quite a low price, and so that's how that's how we did business in those countries.
That's amazing. Did you ever go to East Germany back in the day as well?
Yes, I was in East Germany as well. I remember I was once, the East German business partners took me out to a cabaret on a Saturday evening, and there was a guy sitting on a chair with a book, reading from and he said, "I have the latest traveling book, cooking book, the latest cooking book from the German Democratic Republic." And then he read a recipe, and he said, "You take one banana," and then the whole audience roared, were laughing like mad. And then they said, "Then you take a carrot," and then they laughed again. And then I did not laugh because I did not understand. And then later I asked, why did these people? I asked my East German business partners, why did these people always laugh when the guy read from this cooking book? And they said, well, you can't get all these things, so it doesn't make any sense that these recipes are useless because you can't get the ingredients. so that was funny,
Wow.
Did you ever go to any of the so-called independent socialist countries at the time, like Albania or Romania?
Yes, I was, for example, Romania. Yes, that was very difficult to do business with them, because basically they had no hard currency. They had a very special economic system. They would not make any debts. They would not accept any credits. We had at that time, there were banks who were ready against an export insurance guarantee to finance exports to such countries. And but Romania at that time did not accept any financing, so we couldn't sell a lot to them. Also, they did not do much counter trade. So that was one of the most difficult countries I have ever been to do business.
Wow. And did you go, as Justin said, did you go to Albania at all?
Yeah, but well, we tried to do business there, but we could not. It was not successful. Our mission was not successful there.
Well,
Okay.
much like that period of time, and much like 2019, Gareth and I also had a unsuccessful business experience there. So not much has changed.
Okay.
No,
I think.
Actually,
I suppose Enver Hoxha did a thorough job, influenced the people a lot, right?
Yeah, his legacy lives on.
It certainly does. His wife only died last year.
Okay.
And actually, just as a side note, speaking of Enver Hoxha, and I was exaggerating, actually. In 2019, Gareth and I shot a film in Albania, and it actually came out really well, and it was a great experience. But there were, of course, some challenges with it. But we filmed quite a bit of the movie in Gjirokastro, which was the city that Enver Hoxha was born in. And actually, you could still find graffiti, new and fresh graffiti, like, on walls throughout the city with Enver's name with a red star next to it, that people are still putting there.
Well, so there's still quite some nostalgia, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another interesting place was Iran. I went, or we went as a business delegation. We went to Iran, and we really concluded a large deal. It was a very big business in the infrastructure area, and we were more than a week. We were in Tehran negotiating the business. That was. I think when President Rafsanjani, that was not, Khomeini was not not there any longer, but I think it was when President Rafsanjani was in charge, and every day we had shish with kebab, and the next day kebab with shish, and then shish with kebab, and then so always the same food. And in the evening, we could only drink tea, and that for more than a week. And then when we were happy that we could conclude a good deal, and then we traveled back via Rome, and a stopover in Rome. I went to an airport, a nice airport restaurant, and we ordered everything that was in the menu. The whole table was full of food. I never had such an experience. We were so, how shall I say, we were craving. We hadn't had any. We had always the same shish kebab and tea, and then we missed our airplane. Because we were still eating and drinking in Rome, So, but I must say the Iranians, they were good business people. They were interesting business people, and I also did business with Saudis and others, and I must say that the Iranians are quite pleasant compared to some others in the region there.
Yes, I would thoroughly agree with you on that. Iran hasn't changed very much from a food point of view, I'm afraid. Although liquid options tend to be slightly more varied these days.
Right,
I've heard. if you know the right people.
Yeah, sure.
But okay, so that's been. This is just absolutely fascinating me, blowing me away. I could carry on forever. But Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we are at the halfway period, yes?
We are at the halfway period, which means we can get into the juicy bits on the other side.
Okay, so if you've enjoyed this so far, the only way to listen to the second part, www.ypt.life/subscribe. You can listen to our full podcast, get all our content, join our video club for as little as the price of a cup of coffee per month. So it's well worth joining. So goodbye and hello.
Okay, and this is the second half of the Pioneer Podcast with our special guest today, Mr. Felix Abt. He lived and worked for 7 years in the Hermit Kingdom. He is also the author of A Capitalist in North Korea. And this is the second half where we're getting into some of the more, as Gareth would say, juicy bits about Felix's life and times living in the DPRK. So, Felix, looking at your book here and sort of where you started with North Korea. So you first came to North Korea, I think, in 2002 to work for the ABB Group on improving North Korea's power grid. And, just in terms of background, we talked about in the first half that this was sort of in the period of the Sunshine Policy, where before the heavy sanctions came in 2005, and the ABB Group was looking at North Korea as a company which might open up and implement some Chinese-style reforms. And this was also right after the Clinton administration had made a deal with Kim Jong-il, where Kim Jong-il was going to scale back North Korea's ballistic missile program, a nuclear development, in exchange, I think, for some light water reactors, which were supposed to significantly improve the country's sort of old and archaic power grid. Did that factor into the work that you were doing? Can you tell us just some more specifics about what the power grid looked like and the work that you were doing to try to improve it?
Yeah, so the ABB group for which I worked as its country director in North Korea had won a deal to supply North Korea with the two reactors for this for these two nuclear power plants, and later ABB was also supposed. The North Koreans expected ABB to improve the dilapidated power transformation and distribution system, because as we have realized when we checked this system that a lot of electricity got lost during the process of transforming and distributing power. So the country could save a lot of money and potentially additional power plants if power transformation, power distribution was improved. So what I did, among other things, is to negotiate a deal on the improvement of the power distribution transformation and distribution system, and we came to an understanding. We signed a letter of understanding in presence of the Swiss foreign minister and the Swedish ambassador and the North Korean minister of power technologies and coal industries. The Swiss foreign minister and the Swedish ambassador were there because the ABB Group is a Swedish multinational corporation. So, but then the signature of this agreement was, of course, not well received in Washington and in other Western capitals, because they wanted to put pressure on the DPRK to reverse the development of its nuclear self-defense capabilities, and so we were not able because of pressure to implement this project, which was actually a vital project for the DPRK. But I must say, I was impressed by the DPRK, how it found alternative possibilities. For example, the natural generation of electricity, like solar energy.
Yeah, renewable energy.
Energies. So, but still, it of course it has a huge demand for power, because the DPRK once was highly industrialized and factories need a lot of power. So that certainly was a blow to the development of North Korea's industry and economy.
What was speaking of the power grid, though, what can you describe, I guess, what were the facilities like that they brought you to when you first went to the country? And like, from what era would you say that the power grid was from, that you were trying to improve?
Well, we have seen, we visited power generations, we visited substations, generators, and so on. And we were quite surprised how ingenious they were. They for example, they copied, they built power stations and transformers by taking leaflets from Soviet Union and other countries and trying to copy what they what they could find on publicly accessible literature. So, but of course, for our professional electrical engineers and mechanical engineers, they saw that it is that the efficiency and efficacy of these installations were far below international standard, and so that they would lose a lot. These installations would be largely underperforming, which means they would have had to build more power plants, and the money was not there to build more power plants because of underperforming existing installations. So we did not tell them that they have to build more power stations. We told them it's better for you, it's more economical and faster to be realized if we fix outdated transformers, for example. And we can even give you, bring in transformers from a factory we had in the south, or ABB has in the south, which produces, for example, large transformers that are environmental friendly. They don't use oil anymore and leak oil anymore. So not only they could have a higher efficacy, but also it would be more environment friendly. And in 2002, in 2003, there was an exhibition in Pyongyang, and we brought this large transformer to Pyongyang, to that exhibition, together with the South Korean head of that transformer factory, and we talked about possibly setting up a factory in the north, or producing part of the transformer in the north, and using some southern components, and on vice versa, the south could buy components made by the factory in the north, and so on. So the talks were quite good between our ABB Koreans from ABB South Korea and our North Korean partners. They were positive. Everybody was upbeat at the time, but then it didn't last long until there were political hurdles imposed by Western countries. So it's a pity. Things did not go the way we thought they should go.
I have to assume that of course, the political hurdles you're referring to was, in part the Bush administration's determination to prove that the DPRK were in violation of, the nuclear agreement that they had signed. And I guess their determination to make North Korea part of the axis of evil post 9/11. But that aside, and getting into, we talk about so much with people traveling to the DPRK, like, okay, but you're only allowed to see what they want you to see, and all these things. But you, as a foreigner living in the country, would have been there every day. You would have been in areas that tourists maybe generally don't go to. I guess. I have to assume that a lot has changed too. I mean, even just basically from what you've described from when you first went there, and then visiting as a tourist, it seems like a lot of things have relaxed for foreigners in the country. But can you talk about a little bit about what it was like when you first moved there, in terms of what district did you live in? What was your apartment like? What were places? What were some of the places that you would visit during your time off? Favorite bars, things to do, just sort of daily life kind of things.
Yeah. So of course, people think I was mainly in Pyongyang, and of course most foreigners are most of the time in Pyongyang. But I had to also travel, because, for example, I was representing companies in the mining field. For example, Sandvik. I was a representative of Sandvik, and of some other companies. ABB was also interested in mining because it did automate mines. So I was traveling also across the country and so for example mines and places really far from the privileged capital. So when I slept in guest houses far from Pyongyang, particularly in wintertime, I slept in a romantic way, if you like, with candlelight, and in a very healthy way because I had a bucket full of ice cold water with which I used to take a shower. So life was not. Outside the capital, life was slightly different. But I don't complain about it. It's you adapt. You do like the locals do. When there's no power, then you accept it, and you adapt to the circumstances. In Pyongyang, I was 3 times. I had 3 different apartments actually. I was in 3 different places, and my wife, the last one where we were longest, I was in the diplomatic village. First, I was outside. I was the first one was the ABB had a villa in a compound where there were many other villas and particularly foreign businesses had a residence or used a villa for living and for doing business and for receiving business delegations and so on. That was a huge government compound in Pyongyang. And then I moved to another place later when ABB closed its representation. I moved to another place in the city center somewhere, and I stayed for a while there. And then my wife, she felt a little bit lonely there, and she wanted to have more contact with her Vietnamese friends. So we moved to an apartment adjacent to the Vietnamese embassy in the diplomatic village. So there she could see her Vietnamese friends every day if she wanted to, and the rental fee, I don't remember exactly how much it was, but of course the villa cost several $1,000s a month. But smaller apartments cost much less. But I can't really remember how much I paid for the rent. I would have to ask my wife; she knows better.
as is always the case. What were daily living costs like? Buying groceries. Where did you buy groceries? How much did it cost to eat in restaurants? What kind of restaurants did you go to? I think Justin was sort of asking those kind of questions as well. And where did you get a beer? Where did all the cool kids hang out and drink in Pyongyang?
I remember there was a Swedish guy and a Swedish woman. They worked for some NGOs, and they had a hobby. They explored all kinds of restaurants and bars in Pyongyang, and they tried. They tried at least, and then there were more people joined them. So they went to bars and restaurants, and some of these restaurants and bars where only North Koreans were, they complimented them out of their restaurant or their bar because they were somehow not welcome, and others accepted them. And then they made a list which they updated and edited. So I also visited myself some Korean restaurants where no foreigners went, and sometimes they allow me in, sometimes they did not. So I was not so much interested in looking for restaurants that offered Western food. I was more interested in really eating local food, something I do wherever I go. Where if I go to a new country, I'm not.
Why is it that you think they refuse you entrance into their restaurant?
Perhaps I'm not sure if I don't think it's a policy. It's perhaps the owners or those who run it are not used to foreigners or think they're potential troublemakers or something like that, because others allowed us in. So I don't think it is not a government policy not to not to allow us in. So it's probably individual. It depends perhaps on the organization they belong to and so on. So so and then of course I went to a restaurant where for the bulgogi. I went to a favorite one of mine was the Okryugwan restaurant for its cold noodles, the best on the Korean peninsula, the best cold noodles. And so I tried out a lot of things, but sometimes the restaurant that was open last year was open in 1 year, wasn't open again the next year, or new restaurants opened up and some closed. And I had even staff former staff who opened restaurants, and I also went there to be a guest to support their business. And I ate a lot of Korean food there and enjoyed it. My wife even had a Korean who told her how to cook Korean food. She can, I think she could do about 15 or 20 different kinds of kimchi. And she really knows. She does fantastic kibimbap and all that things. So we ate well, and we bought. My wife could go sometimes with Vietnamese embassy staff to some markets where no other foreigners went. I don't know why. Perhaps Vietnamese diplomats had more opportunities than others. I don't know. But we also went to other markets, or she went mainly to other markets to buy stuff. And
okay, so sorry. Just something I want to go back to. So your book is The Capitalist in North Korea. You spoke about restaurants opening, restaurants closing, or a particular server might go and open a restaurant, so you'd want to support them. Now, as far as we're aware, everything in North Korea, restaurants, etc., are state-owned. So how does one open a restaurant in North Korea? Or is that a question we can ask you?
Yeah, so, it was it was like it was in Vietnam in the very early days of Dong Moi policy. It's reform policies, and even in China it was also that business people wanted to set up their own private business had to do it like a joint venture, sort of, with a state company or a state organization. So that will happen. So you know somebody, you have a friend who is the director of a state company or a state restaurant, and you say, I have a business idea. I would like to open a pizzeria, and share my profit. And it's legally it's under your organization's name, not under mine. And that's how it works. And then it was a case like that in Vietnam until private business became legitimized and legal and you know, so that's how it worked at the time.
Yeah, and things haven't changed in Pyongyang as well. Things are still well and truly closing down and opening up all the time. And even before COVID, when I was frequenting the country, you know, you'll gain interest in your favorite restaurant, and about 3 months later, you'd ask about it, and unfortunately, you've heard they've either relocated or most likely closed or whatnot. So, hearing you mentioning that, yeah, it's certainly still happening these days. When was actually the last time you visited North Korea?
Well, that's already, I don't remember, that was already a few years back. I mean, since they since sanctions, since the Trump sanctions, I mean, this so-called maximum pressure campaign was launched by Trump, I haven't gone back anymore because I thought it's absolutely useless. And or I would meet North Koreans in Beijing or even here. I've received North Koreans here in Vietnam to talk about business or potential business. But
quite a few North Koreans in Vietnam. Yeah.
So
quite a few in Saigon, surprisingly too.
Yeah. I met. For example, I showed them Saigon. Showed them around in Saigon, and So I still keep friendly relations with some of them, but I have no illusion that business is not really feasible at this time.
Right, and whilst you're living in Pyongyang, it's quite for the expats living there. They're told not to use the public transportation like the trolley bus or the metro. So, how did you find yourself getting your way around in Pyongyang?
Well, I could use the underground already if I wanted, and I did it once or twice. But I had a car. I drove my own car without driver. I didn't want to have a driver. I even once drove up north. Of course, I was not alone. I went there with staff, but they were in another car, and I was in my car because I wanted to have this experience. You know, I was driving in Swiss mountains. But it was, of course, more challenging to drive in wintertime in North Korean mountains. So it was quite an adventure.
Where did you go? Where did you go exactly?
We went to what is called up north in the where this big. What is it called? We went to a big mine far up in the north at the Chinese border. Forgot.
Was it in North Hamgyong province?
Yes, North Hamgyong province. So
right.
They have the biggest. Gosh, I can't say now the material that you need for the construction company. A product that you need for the construction company. Perhaps it comes back later. So yeah, we went up there, and that was quite a challenge driving there.
It still is a challenge. Not much. The roads have certainly not changed. Yeah. But North Hamgyong, it surprised me. My first visit there in 2014, we had a roadblock and we had to reroute for another 6 hours. But it surprised me. Like you'd find these like coal mines dug out. You could tell they were dug out by hand, and you had the mine carts that would come out next to the road, and we would pass this and be like, "Wow, this is pretty cool." And the guides would gently look at us, be like, "Yeah, a lot of coal up here."
Yeah,
don't take photos.
So now it comes back. It was an iron ore mine, Asia's largest iron ore mine, which is in Musan, and
all right.
I went with the director of the Musan mine, some other engineers. I went to Sweden which has at that time which had the most modern iron ore mine world, where the miners were sitting far from the mine in some air-conditioned offices, and were sitting in front of big screens, and were sending unmanned vehicles around, and operated crushers and other conveyor belts, and dynamited holes into the mine, and so on, all from a safe distance, and air conditioned, and and that was quite an eye-opening experience for the Musam people. So now now this experience just came back, because I forgot the name, and now it came back. Yeah.
So you spent the winter up in North Hamgyong, in these far rural areas. Is that right? Is that what you're explaining?
No, I
before?
did not spend. No. I was always in Pyongyang, but I visited places outside Pyongyang, including mines in the north.
Right. Yeah, fascinating. And what were some of the activities you did with the Koreans you were with to help stay warm?
Pardon me?
What were some of the activities that the Koreans would come up with to be like, it's a bit cold, but this is what we can do to help stay warm? Any tricks they had under their sleeve?
Well, in Pyongyang, they may have had some possibilities to warm during the winter time. Outside the country, of course, they had some heated floors in some places, and in other places they would just burn coal or something to get some warmth. But also they slept with thick clothes and so on, and like me. I mean, when I went to a guest house and there was hardly any heating, because often there were power cuts, so you slept with your winter coat in the bed,
Yeah, we've been there, done that. Were you able to complete any of the projects you were working on during your time there? Were you able to help improve any of the networks they had there in regards to electricity?
Well, we had some so-called USP. What is it called? How shall I say? It's a battery-based stabilizer, which helped stabilize the tension of the power, and so because all this this huge fluctuations, they burnt a lot of machines, a lot of motors and so on in the factories. So we found the producer of the best system, which was able to deal with such huge fluctuations. There were most systems that were on the market at that time. They were not able to cope with such huge fluctuations. And so we found a producer who had these stabilizers, which were good for North Korea, and this helped really save a lot or prevent a lot of damage to factories, to North Korean factories. So that's perhaps something that a small contribution from our side.
That's good to hear. Yeah, there's been some since the North Koreans did change to renewable energy. There has been some improvement. I could tell over the years to the network, which is good. Maybe like a minor improvement, but definitely better than early in the last decade.
Sure.
All right.
And I guess, we're starting to get to the end of the time, and you mentioned, and we sort of touched upon that after you stopped working in the power sector, you opened a pharmaceutical company, actually a pharmacy chain in North Korea. And if people want to read all about that, they can get your book, A Capitalist in North Korea, which I have here on my shelf. And I found it was just a fascinating read in terms of what it was like to do business in the country and live there, day to day. But I wanted to ask you a question, because I asked this to pretty much everybody we talked to who has spent considerable time working or living in North Korea. You're obviously a capitalist. It's the name of your book. You're not a socialist well, maybe you could have socialist leanings and still be a capitalist, but you're not a communist, I have to assume. What are some things that North Korea as a socialist society gets right? Everybody goes there for a week, writes these books about everything North Korea gets wrong. What are some things you think North Korea gets right as a society?
Well, I think the education system looks quite impressive for boys and girls, and for people in cities and in villages. So I think everybody has the opportunity to go to a decent school, and I think that's already. I have, having worked in a lot of developing countries, that's not something natural. For example, in Africa, many girls don't go to school. In Arab countries, many girls don't go to school. So North Korea differs a lot in this respect, as a good education is something important in this country. And of course there is a lot of things that, at least on paper, are okay, but they may not be realized because the resources are not there, largely also because the resources are refused. This is a country which cannot export its resources anymore and make money with it. To import other resources, it needs to import modern machinery and technology, for example. You have to pay that in hard currency, and they're not allowed to make any hard currency currently. So it's really a country that is cornered and that is facing strangulating sanctions. And so if you look at it from this perspective, then it's difficult to blame the country for many of its shortcomings.
Yeah. So going on from that point, I think we all probably have a similar view on this. What do you think should happen with the sanctions? Do you think they should just be ended? And if they were ended, what would the next stage be for North Korean business and North Korean progression?
Yeah, I think these sanctions. The sanctions have achieved nothing but misery to the North Korean people. They have not achieved to break the will of the North Koreans to give up its nuclear self-deterrence. But sanctions kill, as we know. 500,000 Iraqi children were killed by sanctions, and the sanctions in North Korea are even harsher. So, and it has destroyed not only foreign investment, all foreign investment, including mine, but also lots of Korean businesses in North Korea, small and larger. and it has taken, as I said before, it has taken the possibility away from the country to earn money in a legal, in a legitimate way to finance its import needs, and so also companies like the pharmaceutical company I was running is not able to achieve the so-called good manufacturing practices standard, which is a standard internationally recognized by the pharmaceutical industry as defined by the World Health Organization. It cannot, because it is not able to import spare parts, for example, or certain machines and tools, which and it's not only the pharmaceutical industry, it's also the food processing industry. The food processing industry is not able to have the same hygiene standards that everywhere else are considered as normal or as necessary. If you, for example, you cannot, if you're not allowed to have a microbiological laboratory to check if your production process and the end product, for example, food or medicine, is free of germs, free of things that can harm the health of the people. So, yeah, the situation is really difficult under these sanctions.
But let's say that sanctions did finish tomorrow. Do you think the DPRK could progress with its current economic system, or do you feel it needs to go down a doi moi or Chinese-style chimera type policy? Does it need to have more of a mixed economy, or can it do it through the state sector?
Well, I think as all historic examples have shown of countries with a 100% state-run economy, which is difficult to generate prosperity. It needs to have a more mixed economy, like China and Vietnam. Perhaps it may control it more. It may control the private sector more, but I mean, China, for example, if you look at what's going on in China with big tech. In the US, politicians complained about how powerful big tech companies are, but they can't do anything about it because politicians, they don't work for the people, they work for their sponsors, and big tech are also big sponsors of politicians. Whereas in China, billionaires cannot buy the Chinese Communist Party, and so the Chinese government is able to break up big tech monopolies and oligopolies and make sure there is a real market economy and not a dysfunctional market economy like it has become largely in Western countries. So the North Koreans have the possibility to learn from different examples and take the best, what's best for them.
Okay, so again, so despite being the capitalist in North Korea, would you you've spoken about how things are done in the West? Would you sort of favour on a global scale a bit more of a mixed economy and more state intervention?
Well, I would, if you ask me, I would fix a lot of dysfunctionalities for example, well, we have just talked about big tech. I'm against monopolies and oligopolies. They're very bad for everybody except the monopolies themselves. I would also other anomalies or dysfunctionalities. Look at, for example, the banking sector. Banks have degenerated and became casinos. Because they know they can play like in a casino and run banks against the wall, because they know that they will be bailed out, and the taxpayers will pay for their huge losses. I would also not allow that companies could externalize costs and internalize profits. That, for example, when producers pollute the environment and not pay for that, then that means it's such an economy is dysfunctional. So there's a lot of things I would try to fix to make economies work better and work for more people.
Well, I would certainly vote for you if you were running for some kind of office.
Thank you.
I very much agree with a lot of what you're saying. So we've kept you for an awfully long time. So I think that we're going to have to kind of draw things to a close. But Justin, Rowan, this is our opportunity. If you guys got some more questions or things you'd like to talk with Felix about before we end the show.
I'd just like to thank Felix for your time. It's fascinating to hear your input on the efforts you had in North Korea before, and it's well, I'm hoping to see you at some point in Vietnam, or if not in Beijing, when you said you met up with a couple of North Koreans out there. So hopefully to see you on the road once COVID ends.
And I would just add, that I think this was a pretty good window into Felix's book, which of course we all enjoyed. And for anybody who wants to check that out and read more, it's called A Capitalist in North Korea. You can order it on Amazon. It's got a lot of really great anecdotes beyond even what we've discussed here today from Felix's 7 years living in North Korea, and a lot of great pictures too, because we all like that. Check it out.
Okay, thank you very much. It was nice talking to you guys, and yeah, I'm here where you can reach me. I'm always ready. We have fantastic seafood here, by the way. I would be happy to invite you to seafood if you happen to jump over here. And
well, don't you worry. Once that border is open, me and Rowan will run there if we have to.
Okay, great.
Okay, so this has been the Pioneer Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed our interview and enjoyed listening to the fabulous story of Felix Abt. If you haven't already, or if you'd like to upgrade, www.ypt.life/subscribe. And that is how you can listen to our wonderful podcast. We've got a number of other interesting people lined up. I'm Gareth Johnson. Big thanks to Rowan Beard and Justin Martell. We are signing off.